We've already seen how I can take my image and trace the image using the brushes and pencil and other tools in Illustrator. But sometimes when I've drawn an image like this, really I don't want to recreate the whole drawing again, so sometimes image trace can be a good solution. Now, in the case of this superhero, normally I would redraw the lines because I want a specific clean quality of line for this drawing. But if I wanted a more sketchy look, image trace is a good option. So what I want you to do is open up imagetraceart.ai, and once you're in there, you can go to the window menu and choose image trace to open up the image trace panel. Now I'm going to drag it over here and dock it next to my navigator so that I have all the settings available to me. Now you can access some of the settings up here, so I could click on image trace here and it will convert the image to a tracing object. But if I have a layer selected and I click on preview down here, it will actually preview the image trace for me and allow me to make some changes. Now along the top we have various options for using colour and grayscale and black and white. We've already looked at some of the colour options in the introduction, so what we're going to do is concentrate on black and white and grayscale. Now, if you choose one of the presets down here, it will choose the colours for you. So if I go to Sketched Art, for example, notice it changes the mode to black and white. Okay, and that's the same as clicking black and white here. Changing it in the menu and changing it here will do exactly the same thing. Now, in the menu, it only gives you three choices between colour, grayscale and black and white. However, these allow you to choose between auto colour, high colour and low colour, grayscale, black and white and outline. Now, there are preview modes as well. If we go up to our view menu up here, we can choose how to view our tracing result. We can see the tracing result with outlines, or we can see the outlines on the original image, or just the outlines of source image themselves. But really, the most useful is to actually see the result of the trace. So with black and white, you get a threshold, and you decide how high you want that threshold to be. So if I just move that up, I can add more of the areas of grey to black. So basically, I will look at the image and try and change it to a black and white image. So if it sees grey pixels, if we put the threshold higher, it will put those grey pixels towards black. If we put it lower, it will tend to push those grey pixels towards white. So if you want more black areas, increase the threshold. Then we have our advanced setting. In the advanced setting, we can determine things like how many corners are used and how many paths are used. So with path fitting, the higher value usually means a tighter fit, but by reducing that value, we can actually make the image a little bit faster to process. Let's go back up to our presets. Notice that if I choose black and white logo, it will adjust the settings for me. And we get completely different result from going to SketchArt. It takes a little bit of time to update this, but SketchArt is a little bit more accurate, and you'll notice that it's adjusted the noise and corners settings. So these presets refer to these settings, and these are in the advanced section. Now, generally what I'll do is I will increase the threshold first of all, try and get as much detail as I can, and usually about 180 works well with my artwork. Then I'm going to try reducing the paths, and I try reducing it to quite a low value, and you'll notice that as I do that, down here these numbers will update. So I'm simplifying the artwork, and that's actually working quite well, so I could probably go down even lower. Let's try going right down to 1%. And that way we're losing a lot of the anchor point detail. It's kind of like going to simplify path up here. I think I'm going to go a little bit higher, so I think 8% worked well. So we'll go up to 8%. So then we have the setting for corner emphasis. Higher value means more corners. And it depends whether you're working with curves or straight edges. But if I bring that down to a very low value, you'll notice that this number changes here. And if we watch the artwork as well, we get a higher number of anchors, but we get more precision on our artwork. If I bring that up to high value, you'll notice the number changes again. And we get a lower value, but I kind of think it's less accurate. Actually, with corners, I usually find that 50% is actually fine for my artwork. Then we have noise settings down here, and you can reduce noise by ignoring areas of a specified pixel size. So for example, if we have a look at my source image, you'll notice there are little specks and flecks all through the image where I've used the eraser tool to erase parts of the image. If I go back to tracing result, notice none of them have come through. If I put a higher value, I'll reduce the noise, okay? But you'll usually find, if we have a look at the settings down here, that the numbers also update and we also lose a bit of detail. So you want to bring this down as low as possible. If I bring it down to 1 pixel, we're probably going to get a little bit of messiness in my drawing, which I actually don't mind. But if you don't want these little specks appearing, just reduce the noise and probably about a setting of 10. You don't want it too high because some of the detail in the hair you'll lose if you reduce the noise too much. So usually a fairly low value, as low as you can get away with. At the moment it's only creating fills, but we can also say create strokes. And if you say create strokes, for thin edges, it will try and create strokes rather than fills. And that's going to reduce the amount of anchors for you as well. It will increase the amount of paths though, so, you got to weigh up which is more important to you. If you want to have a look at how that affects the outlines, you can go up to here and choose to view the outlines as well. So let's have a look at that. So there's our outlines. Let's have a look at it on the source image. And if I take strokes off, you'll notice we adjust the amount of paths to about 1/3. So generally I leave that off, but you can put that on if you want strokes. So let's put it back on tracing result. Now, I think this has worked quite well and I'd be quite happy with this, but I just want to show you some grayscale options as well. If we click on the preset menu again, I could go in here and choose shades of grey as my preset. And as a default, it will use 50 shades of grey. And you'll notice it takes quite a long time to do the pixel clustering and smoothing and all the amazing things that this is doing in the background. I quite like using grayscale to create a kind of sketchy look. If I'm not too worried about colouring the image, but I just want to get a kind of sketchy look, I quite like using shades of grey. And I'll show you why in a second. It gives me grey areas as well as black areas, and it looks much more hand-drawn and sketchy. But you'll notice the downside is it takes quite a long time to render. But you can bring down the greys, and really I only need about 10 greys for this drawing. And you'll notice that that speeds things up a little bit. And I have this lovely look to my drawing. It almost makes it look like a watercolour. So I tend to use that. If I want it to look more hand-drawn and pencil sketchy, I tend to use the grayscale values here. Okay, so use grayscale for something sketchy like this. And then if you open Bev Image Trace Start, something like this, which is more cross-hatching really than pencil lines. I've drawn this with a pen, whereas this one I drew with a pencil in Sketchbook Pro. For this one, the grayscale works well because it gives me a more pencil look. For this one, I would definitely choose probably Sketch Start and maybe just adjust the threshold on this. And you'll see I get a really good result with that. With this, I'd probably take the threshold down a little bit because at the higher threshold, it's picking up too many areas as black. By pulling that down, I'm getting a few more highlights on the jeans. And you'll see that that works really well. Once I've done it, the image trace is done. But if I want to actually go in and adjust any of the vectors, I would then click Expand. And now I get vector artwork from my drawing. And it's just such a fantastic way of converting my artwork into vectors. And my style of artwork works really well with this. So have a go with it yourself, do some drawing, and then try just bringing the drawings in and converting them to vectors rather than hand tracing them.